But Sean, let's move into our next topic, and we're taking a look at Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback that I'm glad I learned how to say his name early on, because this is a quarterback that we are going to talk about ad nauseum this year. We've already done, Mark and I on the Onside Kick did a who will be the number one pick a couple months ago, which if you think talking about the draft in July is early, talking about it in what? The draft happened in April, May, so talking about it in late May, early June was even a little bit more ridiculous, but we're looking at Tua because everyone's putting him at the top. Like, ever since the championship game where he came in overtime or the end of the fourth quarter into overtime and beat Georgia, everyone's like, this kid's going to be a first-round talent. Then Trevor Lawrence last year, everyone's like, oh, Tua's going to be good, but, oh, man, this Trevor Lawrence kid's going to be really good in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, the saving grace for Tua is that Trevor Lawrence is a year younger.
Yeah.
Because if Trevor Lawrence was in this draft class,
he'd be the top guy we're talking about.
Not even close. Tua's really good.
He is.
Trevor Lawrence is just insane.
And that's the thing, just to kind of lay everything out. The question is, should teams tank for Tua? Should they do what the Colts did when Andrew Luck was coming out in the suck for luck? Should they tank for Tua?
That's the thing is, I don't think the Colts tanked for Andrew Luck.
For Luck.
They were just a horrible team. Curtis Painter was their quarterback. That was a choice, and I don't think it was a choice to tank. I think they didn't have any other options.
They got rid of their option in Peyton Manning.
No, he was injured that year.
Yeah, no, that was the year. Oh, that's right. He left after that year.
Yeah.
They said no, thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
They said bye-bye.
Yeah, well, it was the neck, and then they said bye, and then he went to Denver.
Yeah.
But this year alone, you've got Tua. Then you've got Justin Herbert, who could have came out last year, but then was like, nope, going to stay because I want to play with my brother, who's going to be a tight end at Oregon. You've got Jake Fromm at Georgia, and then you have Jacob Eason, who was like, hey, Fromm took the job from me, so I'm going to go sit out a year last year, and now I'm going to play for the Washington Huskies this year. Starting with the 2020 class alone.
Yeah.
Should NFL teams tank for Tua, knowing that, hey, if we're the 5th, 6th, even the 2nd or 3rd, there's going to be a quarterback there, whether it's Herbert, Fromm, or Eason?
No, they should not tank for Tua, because I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is, they say at any given Sunday, and I don't think that means, the Miami Dolphins can be a playoff team if they go out there and hustle every 16 games, because they're a bad team.
16-0, baby.
But I do think that tanking in the NFL is stupid, just because having a good year, I think, is more important than, tanking to possibly get a guy and take a shot. Because if you're doing your job correctly, you can always find guys that can make an impact on the field. And teams like Miami, there is an option in a way that you still have a quarterback on the roster that could be a future quarterback in Josh Rosen. So it's not really the need that you need a young quarterback on that roster. You can always build up the one that you have.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessary for them to tank. Just thinking of Miami, because I think that they're most likely going to be the worst team. Taking in Cincinnati as well. Cincinnati, you have a quarterback in Andy Dalton, who I am not in love with, and I think you probably should have cut before this year. And then you look at them bringing in a new head coach, especially him being an offensive guy. You think that they could probably go after a quarterback, but if you're doing your scouting well, you can find a guy in the second round that could still make an impact. I mean, it's not always for sure and certain that the guy that is going to be the best quarterback in that draft class is going to be the number one guy coming out. Even then, I mean, look at Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton was a second-round pick. So you're able to find value if you're just doing the right scouting. And I think what's most important for these teams is making sure that you're not wasting a year of the guys that you already have. Because if the Bengals tank, then they're just wasting a year of A.J. Green if they don't trade him. If they tank, they're just wasting another year of Joe Mixon. They're wasting the ability for, I think it's Zach Dyson, right? What's their coach?
Zach Taylor.
Zach Taylor? Is it Zach Taylor?
I think it's Zach Taylor.
That doesn't sound right. Is it Zach Taylor? It is Zach Taylor. That was Zach Dyson or whatever. But Zach Taylor, I mean, he needs the ability to at least win over that locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's, if
you
they're
don't do
tanking
that
and
by
if they're
losing.
if they're tanking and they're not trying and they're just giving up every single Sunday, then you're going to lose that locker room. And you're already going to fail on the head coach. You're going to have to fire him right away.
Mm-hmm.
So I think tanking could be extremely detrimental to your health of your franchise. Just for one player, are you going to sacrifice the lives of like 75 guys, including the coaching staff, because you got the 53-man roster, then obviously the coaching staff that's along with it. You're going to sacrifice all that for one guy? Seems pretty ridiculous to me. Where you can, try and, hey, maybe you're the 7th seed or whatever, or 7th team, 7th pick, whatever. But you can still find a guy like Jacob Fromm, who I think is a fantastic quarterback, or Justin Herbert, who was seen as the number 1 quarterback last year. I think you should see how good you are, because if you are, a really great team outside of one position, then you could go in and attack that position. So if the Bengals realize that Andy Dalton still has a lot left in his tank, you still have him under contract, he has this great year under Zach Taylor, it revitalized his career, then why are you going to then go out and get a number 1 pick in Tua Tagovailoa and make that guy your quarterback and not really know if he's the guy? And even just looking at Tua last year and what he did, he was phenomenal, but you look at the first 8 games, he was 25-0. He had 25 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. Yeah. And then he started facing tougher competition that started putting more pressure on him. And in that last stretch of Louisiana State, LSU, to Clemson, he started to look a little bit more mortal and had 6 interceptions over those, 7 games? I can't do math. What's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, 7 games. Over those last 7 games, he had 6 interceptions, which isn't bad by any
but compared
means.
to the 25-0, it's like, holy shit, what's going on?
He looked more normal, and you saw more flaws into his game. And I don't think it's necessarily clear that at the end of this season, Tua is going to be the best quarterback out of this draft class. Right now, he is, and he had a phenomenal season. But how limited is he? Is he dealing with great weapons, and he just was able to find them? How well is a lefty quarterback going to do in the NFL? And this is as a lefty. There's not a ton of lefties out there. The last great one was Mike Vick. So what are you going to be able to do in the NFL, especially compared to some of the flaws that you're now showing in your college career? If Tua comes out and has a phenomenal year again, then I wouldn't be shocked if he's the number 1 overall pick. But I don't think you should tank for him, because that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to hit in the NFL. And again, you could really be hurting the actual ecosystem of your NFL team by tanking.
Yeah, and when I look at the teams, I'm going to have a complex answer where if you ask me, should teams tank for Tua, the answer is going to be no. If you asked me, should teams tank for the number 1 pick, I would say no except for one. And let me get into that. First, should teams tank for Tua? Miami. Well, why are you tanking for Tua when you just traded for Josh Rosen? With me, march Josh Rosen out there. Like, I know you signed thick Patrick.
But then to answer that question, why did the Arizona Cardinals not tank, but why did they then go take out Kyler Murray when you just took Josh Rosen?
No, that's what I'm saying. March Josh Rosen out there. Let him play. If you suck and you're the 1st overall pick, then you got a decision to make. Hey, if you don't like Rosen, cool, you can take Tua. Guess what? If you're number 2 and you don't like Rosen, you can take Herbert. You can take Fromm. There's going to be quarterbacks there at 2. For Miami, let's see what Rosen, maybe Rosen goes out there and he actually like what you traded for. The Bengals are interesting because Andy Dalton, his contract next year is going to be his contract year. So I think they're in prime position to take a quarterback, but I don't think they necessarily need Tua to be that quarterback, where they could bring in a guy like Fromm, bring in a guy like Eason, bring in a guy like Herbert, let him sit that first year, and then after Dalton is gone, bye Andy, and then our new guy comes in, who we drafted in 2020. Arizona obviously doesn't need a quarterback. The Giants, I guess, don't need a quarterback because they just drafted one last year, although they took him way too high. The next one is the Buccaneers. But the Buccaneers, if you're really I don't see tanking being in the blood of Bruce Arians. He just doesn't seem like a tanking kind of guy. But also it's like you're then setting Jameis up for failure. Like, let Jameis go out there and try to win a future with the Buccaneers. And then after that, I just don't think there's teams like maybe the Raiders have a catastrophic year this year and are the number one pick. But like after that, I think teams are going to be maybe too good to necessarily be that number one pick. Now, if you ask me if there's a team that should tank for the number one overall pick, I would say yes. That team is the New York Giants. And the reason why I say should they tank is today on the, I think it's Golick and Wingo now, they asked Sal Pal, hey, you know what, is there going to be a competition for the quarterback spot in New York? And he said, oh, I don't think I know. So basically open competition in New York for that job. If I'm New York, if I want to tank for the number one pick, you can do it without actually trying to be bad. Like, if I'm the Giants and I'm like, all right, we don't need Tua because we took our guy Daniel Jones, but man, I would love to get that number one pick in order to get some draft capital from a team that might want to trade up for Tua. How I do that is I tank by saying, all right, Eli, you're done. Daniel Jones is starting. That's how I tank, because I just don't think Daniel Jones is going to be a good quarterback. So really you're confusing your fans by saying, yeah, we're letting our rookie go out there and get game experience, but you're tanking in the process.
I kind of like that. I mean, just because the idea of them being so bad at drafting, it means they're tanking, is hilarious.
And you drafted him so high to where it's like, well, we have to play him this early. He's our guy.
We did the best idea. We picked the best player, best quarterback available for us at 6. And we're going to start him, and that means we're tanking. It's a ridiculous idea, but I do like it. But what's the idea? What's the goal for them to tank?
The goal for them to tank would be to get the number one pick.
So then they could trade back?
In order to trade back to get more draft capital. Because they don't need a quarterback.
Yeah, but they do. Because Daniel Jones sucks.
No. Between us, between normal people, they do. But Giants management, they don't.
Man, I would say that if the Giants tanked, I think it would. I mean, what does tanking even look like in the NFL? You know, like you can't trot out Michael Carter Williams out there. Like, is Daniel Jones just the equivalent?
Yeah,
of trotting out like
it's like
Robert
what you
Covington?
said the Colts did. Instead of trying to get a decent starter at quarterback, we're going to throw Curtis Painter out there. Like, we are deliberately going to throw a backup out there because that was the big thing during that season. It was like, you know, you could go out and get this guy and he could be no, we're good. Curtis Painter's our starter. Like, that is tanking in the NFL. Like, it would be like the Dolphins if they were just like, no, we're not going to start Rosen. We know Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to lose us games this year, but it doesn't matter. We're going to play him. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's so teams that would be, I think, then tanking, Daniel Jones, the Giants, purposely starting him if he's not ready. Eli should be the starter. The Dolphins, if they start Fitzpatrick over Rosen. And even if Fitzpatrick's a better quarterback, it's just still the wrong decision because of what Rosen could be. And then the other team that I think would be in that range would then be the Bucks, because Bruce Arians is all about, we're starting Jameis Winston. I wouldn't be shocked if that's just a play to make sure that you guys can clearly say that you were wrong. You tried out Jameis Winston, you missed on that pick, and now you can take another shot at a highly ranked quarterback. So I think those would be the 3 teams that could tank for Tua, but I don't think it's an actual strategy. I don't think it's strategery from any of these teams. I think that if they are the number one pick, they will just absolutely suck.
Because the backup now,
of lack of talent on both sides.
The backup in Tampa now is Yo Gabba Gabba. Blaine Gabbert is now their backup.
A Cardinal stud. That's why Bruce Arians got him. Yeah, I don't think tanking is a viable option. And even if it was, I wouldn't be tanking for Tua. I would just be waiting and tanking for Trevor Lawrence, because you can see that he's bigger, he's got a better arm, he's more poised, he's got an incredible ball. You see what he was doing in the national championship game, and it wasn't even that he was doing it against Alabama. It wasn't that he was he put up X amount of stats or whatever he put up. It was literally just the balls that he were throwing were insane. And Tua, I don't think, has that consistency of what Trevor Lawrence was doing day in, day out last season. And it took him a while to get up to speed, but when he was up to speed, he looked insanely great. So I wouldn't be taking for Tua. I would be taking for Trevor Lawrence.
Well, that's also the next place I was going to go. You look at the 2020 class, and of course that class is going to develop as we get through this one and get done with 2020. But right now there are clearly two names at the top of that quarterback class. Trevor Lawrence being the one where many people are like, he's going to be the first overall pick in 2021. But then also there's a lot of people looking at Justin Fields, the ex-Georgia quarterback who is now with the Ohio State Buckeyes, to where I don't necessarily know. Well, of course, we got to see him play this year because, I mean, Justin Fields, we saw him play limitedly at Georgia. He played in 12 games, but only threw 42 passes for 266 yards, 4 touchdowns. Caught one pass for negative 10 yards. We're going to obviously need to see him in a lot more of a workload as the starter at Ohio State. But, like, those are two quarterbacks to where it's like, hey, do we necessarily have to throw a season away? Because also it's harder to, in my mind, it's harder to throw a season away in the NFL because, like, in basketball, it's, okay, we can get this one guy and he can change our franchise, where it's like in the NFL, oh, great, we got Tua. Oh, the rest of our team still blows. So we're still a bad team.
Yeah.
It's not like one guy in football can change a team's win-loss like you can see in basketball. So, like, there's that too, to where I'm like, don't tank. Your team's probably going to be bad anyways. Just let the NFL gods, the football gods, do as they may, and you'll probably end up with a 3-win season and still be number one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you're a bad team, it's going to shine. So I agree with you that it's not that important because you can't get that guy to change. I mean, Peyton Manning showed you that. I mean, Peyton Manning was always a great quarterback, but they didn't start winning until they had Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne and a great coach in Tony Dungy out there and a great running back in Edgerrin James and also Joseph Adai to go along with Jeff Saturday on the line and Bobby Sanders, it was Bob Sanders. Bob Sanders in the defensive side, along with Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. Like, you needed a complete team. And even then, people still are like, oh, yeah, Peyton Manning didn't have enough help. He didn't have the defense that Tom Brady had. So with all of that said, one guy is not going to change your franchise. He can make it much easier to build it. If the Colts didn't have Peyton Manning ever, they wouldn't have been in that situation. But you needed everybody else to be that team that took it and didn't waste Peyton Manning's career. You know, right now you could argue that the career of Andrew Luck is being wasted out in Indianapolis because there's no help around him.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there for him to make into a great team. They've never been a Super Bowl contender with Andrew Luck. They've been a playoff team because Andrew Luck is that good, but they never had that defense or that coach or that, well, I mean, they might have that coach now, but they never had that defense or that coach before or the weapons around him or the offensive line to make them Super Bowl contenders. So while it might be a push and a definitely a running start to get a guy like Trevor Lawrence or Tua Tagovailoa, that is a mouthful, it doesn't mean that you're going to be great just because you got a great quarterback. So I would say that naturally, if you're asking me if you should tank for Tua, it's a no. But if you were going to tank, don't tank for Tua because Trevor Lawrence is coming.
Yeah.
And if you're a bad team this year, just don't make any additions. Just be the Miami Dolphins. Sign 3 free agents and just be a bad team the next year. I would tank for Trevor Lawrence if we're playing that game.
And honestly, right now, I will say if it's true that many mock draft boards already that have the Dolphins as the worst team this year, if I'm a Miami fan, I'm hoping Josh Rosen plays well and you get the number 1 pick, because the thing that I look at is we got to go back to the Carson Wentz, Jared Goff draft for this, but like look at the hauls that both the Titans and the Cleveland Browns got for those two, where the Cleveland-Philly deal was Cleveland traded the second pick and a conditional fifth in 2017 to the Eagles, where the Eagles gave up a first, a third, a fourth, as well as a first in the 2017 draft and a second in the 2018 draft. And then the Rams, to move up, they moved up a little bit further, but Tennessee gave up its first, fourth, and sixth picks in exchange for a first, 2 seconds, a third, and then a first and a third in the next year's draft. And then even you can go back to the Cleveland trade when Houston moved up for Deshaun Watson, where even if, let's say, you're 4-5 and you're like, oh, we don't need a quarterback, but Justin Herbert's there might be a team that falls in love with a quarterback to where it's like, hey, I'm still getting a haul at 5 to move back a bit, and I'm getting a future first. I think that this could be a draft because of where these quarterbacks are, where we could see a little bit more trades than we might have seen last year or the year before, because there are going to be teams that fall in love with these draft prospects.
I don't know if it's going to be the Mitch year again, because I think we do have a clear number one guy, where that year we didn't really have a clear number one. Yeah. It was just kind of like Mitch ended up being that guy. But looking back on it, what did he do that Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes didn't?
And there were many people that were like, no, that's wrong. Deshaun Watson should be the first quarterback off
But
the
nobody
board.
said Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, nobody said
Mahomes.
Mahomes.
And if they did, everyone's like, you're fucking crazy. We're just stupid.
Coming from Texas Tech, didn't think an air raid guy.
Talent's talent, man.
Would be
that dude had a cannon, still has a cannon. He's insane. But yeah, no, I think just in the end, I think we have a clear cut guy, but I don't think he's clear cut enough. It's not a Luck year. It's not a Manning year. I think Trevor Lawrence is the next time that's coming around. And if teams tank next year, I wouldn't be shocked.
Like I said, the only way you tank this year is if the Giants start Daniel Jones and they tank for that number one pick in order to get some draft capital from a team that wants to trade up. But let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. Is Tua worth the hashtag tank for Tua moniker that we're going to hear all of this year? Let us know what you guys think down below.